Okay, today I want to talk a little bit about visual language. So we're going to start with the point. Follow along with me. Line, angle, arc, and the spiral, which is the most complex form. Flow. Okay, so these are all lines. And what we call forms are when a line comes around to kind of connect on itself, it starts to have an identity. So in forms we have circle, square, triangle. And you have more shapes as the triangle, or as these forms try to become back to a circle again, they start to get closer and closer until eventually you have a form that almost becomes a circle. So these are what I like to call forms, because they usually represent something with an identity, a thing. So when you look at a kid drawing, they're going to draw a cat this way, they're going to draw a dog, person, no matter what it is, it's going to be a circle. This is a cat, this is a house, whatever. Okay. So we have flows over here, and flows are the kind of things that connect things or form a boundary between them. Flow. So you put any of these flows together and you're going to get, things like this. This is a flow. This is a flow. You put an arrow on the end of everything and you can see the direction it's moving. Forms and flows you can put together into something like what we call a flow chart. Put forms together. This is what we call decision box. Yes, no. If yes, then this. Sorry, if no, then this. If yes, then this. Maybe the no goes back in here until you get a yes, and then you move forward. Okay, so this is a combination of forms and flows to make something we call a flow chart. Okay, nodes and links. So forms, really anything that represents a concept, like a thing or an entity or an event, something that happens in a process, you could call it a node. And anything that represents a connection between nodes, you could call a link. Now, a link isn't the only kind of a flow, but it's the primary one when you're mapping out ideas. Okay. So what else do we have? Well, in between forms and flows, you have something that, I like to think of as a field. Fields are things that create meaningful space or bring meaning to the space. So, for example, you might take some lines like this. And, you might say, this is water. Or you might represent water like this, a series of arcs. And it's definitely going to be water if you put a boat on the top and put some people in the boat. 3 men in a tub. Okay. What other kinds of fields can there be? You can actually, a white space is a kind of a field. The space that I'm working in right here, this whole area here, you could think of as a big field. Okay. When you start to bring meaning into that space, you can do it in several ways. You can turn this field into a perspective space simply by adding in a horizon line. Now you got some buildings over here. This is a farmland, you got a road, etc. There's clouds up here and fields here. These cornfields, let's say. So this is what I like to think of as Renaissance perspective. You might also make this field something like you might see in a chart, for example, where this dimension is time and this is value. So this could be an amount, let's say. So that's another kind of field. Now that there are lots of things you can do and lots of different meanings you can bring to a space. If, for example, you put a little arrow and you say that arrow represents north, well, suddenly the space is a map, and the things that you divide up, like water, mountains, Mordor, the things that you put in there are going to actually, now have forests, city, some roads connecting cities to each other. You're going to actually have now a meaningful space that has the meaning of map. Let's see if I can think of some other meaningful spaces. Well, there's in China, they invented a kind of perspective that was based on the scroll, because they were actually drawing things on scrolls. And you have video games these days that are called scrollers. And Chinese perspective was designed to work well for scrolling. So if you can imagine a Renaissance perspective capturing a single point of view, the Chinese perspective had buildings that were all essentially arranged in space in a kind of isometric or axonometric way, where you had the road here and people here and people way over here and people way over here were all drawn to the same size and scale, because if you're gonna read a story along a scroll, you could read different events happening. Now this might be the same people here doing something over here. So you can imagine this being you could call it a scrolling field. At any rate, there are all these different ways to put together forms and flows within fields, and lots of ways to think about fields, the blank page being a good place to start. So together we think of all these things as forms, which are things that have boundaries and enclose shape. You have fields, which are things that essentially are open space, and then you have flows, which are things that might flow through the space or flow and connect things. That's about it. So hope this was helpful to you, and if you like this, let me know and we'll do some more. Thanks.